All right, let's go.
Okay.
I have a new page up here, and let's just read the title together. Ready, read. What is effective instruction? I'll read the next part. Effective instruction is a research-based plan for creating and delivering well-designed and well-taught lessons. Now, I want you to keep in mind there's two things: creating and delivering. That's writing and teaching, or designing, which is writing, and well-taught. So write a couple notes down here: lesson design and lesson delivery. Lesson design is what I've got on the screen here. I have definitions, I have checking for understanding questions on the side, I have visuals. So that's the design, is what you put up on the wall. The delivery, I'll have you read with me, I'll have you do pair shares, I'll have you do other things. So it's the two things, design and delivery. Okay. All right. Characteristics of effective instruction, not just explicit direct instruction, but any instructional model. Let's read the first one together. Ready to go. Designed to produce at least 80% student success, then corrective feedback to 100%. Okay, so let's keep in mind this. I used to think we should teach to 100%. It takes too long. You're reteaching for 3 students, you're reteaching 2, you're reteaching for 1. So what you want to do, especially when the whiteboards come up, it's very easy to see that you've got everybody. If the whiteboards are 50%, it's boards down or reteach. Okay, you're trying to carry 80%. Now, the ones that don't have it, you give corrective feedback on the fly. Oh, you have a different answer. Can you explain your answer? Well, let me show you. Did you check over here? So you cue and prompt and give them help to answer the question just in real time where you're doing just a couple of minutes. So you need to teach whole class to 80% and then corrective feedback to 100%. I'll show you some extra strategies for the corrective feedback later on. Okay, the second idea for effective instruction, let's read together. Works with all grade levels and disciplines. It doesn't matter whether we're foundation, year 6, or all the way up to high school, or even college. We've had colleges use EDI also. The basic idea that you have a lesson design, you have delivery strategies, it doesn't matter what you're teaching at all. Okay, let's read the next one. Ready, go. Students learn concepts even if there's some sub-skill errors. Now, maybe you could show me, raise a hand. Do some of you do subtraction with regrouping? We used to call it borrowing. Regrouping, you may do that? I'm sure somebody does. Okay, so the idea is if you've got, let's see, what have we got? 82 minus 49, we're going to have to regroup because we cannot subtract 9 from the 2. Every student should walk out of that period knowing that hour, knowing that when you need to regroup and and how to do it. They might make a math mistake when they do the subtraction. They make a math error, but they know conceptually what they're going to do. And let's give another one. We're doing characters. Those are the people in the stories. Or we're doing character traits, which is their personalities. Every student should end up knowing what personality traits are. I'm sorry, if that's the lesson, they know what the traits are. They might be a poor reader, but they still got the concept, they got the idea out of it. So the idea is everybody gets it. The sub-skills are math facts, poor reading ability, but they still get the big idea. And another reason behind this, we work with so many schools, and I know Joel can back me up on this. If you start teaching the sub-skills all the time, you become a remedial school. You're not keeping up on grade level. So you need to teach on grade level. You can scaffold and make effective lessons, but keep the conceptual level moving up. And I think we've heard of Lexiles, the reading levels. We can drop Lexile levels down, but don't drop down the concepts you're trying to teach. Okay, let's read the next one. This is a good one. Ready to go. Increases motivation, improves attendance, encourages more students to turn in homework, and reduces discipline problem. Okay, let's talk about motivation. So there's 3 things we can do for motivations. The first one is we can use the sticks, non-volunteers. So if you're taking notes, write that down. Non-volunteers keep people motivated. Even yourself, I'm going to ask you in a minute something about this page, and you're paying more attention knowing that I might pick you. Okay, so non-volunteers. The second one is lesson importance. Someplace in the lesson, you're telling the student why they're doing this. We need to know how to make change and count money. We don't want to be cheated at the store. We want to know how much money to take with us. So you're showing your students the reason something is important. Okay. And the third one is the I can do it. The students have learned something new and wow, I know how to do this. That's basic human motivation right there. So let me say the three reasons. It's what? Non-volunteers, lesson importance, and I can do it. Can we say those together? The three ways for motivation are what? Non-volunteers. What's the second one? Importance. And what's the third one? I can do it. Yeah, we've got those three. Okay, proves attendance. I'm not sure about your school, but we work with a lot of schools. First went to Australia in 2016 as part of a big grant working with remote Aborigine schools. Mm-hmm. A typical school was 10 hours on a dirt road to get there, and they chartered planes and flew us around and stuff. So attendance was a problem there. So what happened was, as the instruction became more interesting, more engaging, more interesting, it actually improves attendance right there. So if school is just interesting and not boring, kids will come to school. There won't be an idea of dropping out or not coming to school.
Well,
okay,
John,
encourage.
Well, John, let me stop you right there. But one of the most exciting things that I ever heard in my whole life is you were doing a lesson demonstration, and a little kiddo, like a year 5 kiddos, turned to their teacher and said, "Are we going to do it like this tomorrow?" And after that day, I was sold on explicit direct instruction.
Yeah, I think, we do a lot of demo lessons where we go to schools and actually teach students with teacher groups so they can watch us teach. We practice together. And I heard that quite a few times. Oh, we're going to do it this way some more. Oh, this was fun. And Joel, one class was kind of a discipline problem a little bit. And when the bell rang, the student said, "Oh, is the period all over? Wow." The lesson went by so fast. It was just, everybody was so engaged. Anyway, okay, improved attendance. Okay, the last one, to turn in homework. The next one, the secret for homework is students know how to do the homework before it's assigned. You might have heard of brain busters, inquiry, productive struggle, these other ideas. It's tough to get homework done if students don't know how to do it. So make sure they know how to do it. This is actually the research on homework. Homework is to practice to develop fluidity, automaticity, and speed doing something you've already been taught. It's not to learn it from scratch. And I might ask you, and I've asked a lot of teachers, at what grade level do the standards exceed the parents' ability to teach their children content at home? And I hear a lot of year 2s around. So you can't count on the parents teaching cannot be a strategy. The parents are to help their kids, pick them to school every day. If they have homework, give them time, organize their schedules, but not necessarily be able to teach the content. Okay, reduce the discipline problems. If the class is engaging and the kids are doing a lot, the discipline kind of gets suppressed. You're keeping everybody, hold up your whiteboard, explain to your partner, write this answer, explain how you did it. And kids, they don't get off task so much. All right, so now, this is the basic explicit direct instruction book, the original one. Many people are still reading that. This is the revised one, the English learner one, the one in French. And Joel, this is the one in Dutch. And we just went to the Netherlands a couple months ago. It's the #1 educational book in the Netherlands. And it's been, I think, for several years, the top book. They have EDI schools. We went to several schools. We trained groups of teachers. So Australia, I think, really is probably our biggest outside the United States, but the Netherlands is there. They might be catching up.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I do.
No, John, absolutely. We look at research all the time in explicit direct instruction. I think we had one teacher says, like, on their nightstand, they have the Bible and they have the EDI book on their nightstand. So I'm always like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, the 2 books. Well, it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have my first checking for understanding question. Mm-hmm. I want you to think about any educational insight you had from this page. I talked about this 80%. I talked about everybody should learn concepts, design and deliver. The idea is how we can improve these concepts down here. So I want you to get your whiteboards out, okay? And I want you to just write 1 or 2 words of some insight you had or something you could use that might help you off of this page, any educational insight you had. And then we're going to have a sentence frame. And the sentence frame is going to be, my educational insight is. Okay, my educational insight is. So we're going to have the A partners go first. You're going to turn to your partner. My educational insight is, and then read off your whiteboard. And then you have to explain why you selected that. Part of EDI is to justify your answer, explain your thinking, prove you have the right answer. So my insight about instruction is, and then explain why. So we're going to have the A partners go first and then the B partners. So let's go ahead. I'll give you a second to do that.
Okay, A partners are up now. Please share. My educational insight is.
Now, the other partner should be talking. When the A finishes, it's your turn to go, the B person.
Mhm.
All right, I think we're ready. We have a command called chin it, which is like your chin like this. So chin it, when I say chin it, right now let's do it. Chin it, you all hold your whiteboards right up like this. Don't cover your face because I need to see all the students. And don't wave them around. You might block somebody in the back. So they should be right here so I can see you.
Show it to the camera, please. Show it to the camera, please.
Vanessa, you should pick someone to read theirs.
Great. So my educational insight is I really like the non-volunteers. And it's just to call upon, so everybody's staying awake basically, and they don't know if they're going to be called upon, and writing answers on a whiteboard and showing a partner.
Okay, now this is my follow-up, and it should be for your students. So why did you select those two strategies?
I'm putting it in, I'm being in a grade 5 classroom at the moment, and I can see that these two strategies would work really well with those kids. A lot of the time, no offense, when you're talking in front of them, they're not listening, they're tuning out, that it doesn't look like they're really taking what you're saying. So I feel like that would tune them in a lot better.
Okay, thank you for that first one. And let's just call one more.
Oh, exactly the same thing.
Exactly the same thing.
So come up and
Okay,
say
now students are going to say the same thing they said, but you still have to say it. So if you're the second person, you have to give it to me in your own words.
Yep. So my educational insight is that everyone is involved. There's no chance for not having a go.
Okay, and why'd you select that?
Similar reasons. So I've got a group of preps and some listen, some don't. So this is a way to get everyone involved.
Okay, very good. Okay, so in a real classroom, that follow-up question is important. Often the sentence frame is the character trait is blank because. So you've kind of built the justification into your sentence frame. And make sure they're giving you the justification. They're not just reading the answer, just giving a 1 or 2 word answer. They have the whole sentence. And then we'll get to this in a few minutes. And that sentence frame is academic. It can't be my answer is, or I wrote B on my whiteboard.
And everybody's getting it, by the way. Everybody's getting it. This is good stuff. They're on it, John. They're on it. That's good.
All right. I don't know if you have handouts, but I've moved up to page 10. We're going to start with the brain research. Now, the idea of instruction, of course, we have to be brain compatible. We can't be fighting what the brain wants to do. We need to be in sync with the, our chemistry in our brains and how things work. And of course, at the end, we want students to remember it. And so the idea is instruction is what you're trying to get to long-term memory, so they've got it in there. Okay, so I'll read the first one. Memory retention is the ability to store information. What we're trying to do is get from what the teacher talking to long-term memory and trying to get it there. Okay, so let's read how we do it. Ready, go. Memory retention is achieved through attention, rehearsal, mnemonics, and through visual and auditory stimuli. Okay, now attention is what I'm kind of cueing you to do it. Rehearsal is like I read it, then you read it, pair share, explain to your partners. Okay, and we have the visual and auditory right here. We have a presentation to look at, and you're hearing me talk. So let's look at this part right here. Retention can last from 30 to a lifetime, depending on what memory system is at work. And we have the different memory models right here. And the 3 sections are the sensory memory, working memory, and long-term memory. So let's look at this. This is the teacher talking out here. You are hearing every word I say right now in your sensory memory, senses like your ears and your eyes. The kind of very first late absorption of it is just through these like this outside part. In a few minutes, if you don't do something with it, it's just gone. It's not in long-term memory. Your brain is not a tape recorder. Okay. And unfortunately, this is what happens if we lecture a lot and we talk too long. We're hearing it. You hear every word I'm saying, but 10 minutes later or an hour later, you cannot play back word for word what I did. It's in the moment, it's like reading a book or watching TV, but that's not going to be enough to help students learn. So our second one, let's read together. Let's read all of this. Ready, go. Working memory, 30 seconds unless rehearsed, 3 to 7 items, but can still be forgotten. Okay, so I think you probably know the brain only holds 3 to 7 items at once. And this is for very young students. You know, in foundation, you can't teach 20 concepts at once because you kind of overload the brain. So what happens is, but you do need to work with it. We can pair share. We can write notes. We can highlight stuff. We can answer questions. We can solve problems and hold up and explain to our partner how we solve problems. So we need to do stuff in working memory. Working memory is basically our consciousness. This is just listening, our awareness, and this is our consciousness right here. Now, the last one, long-term memory, unlimited capacity and duration. So when you say, what's 6 times 8, all of you can say, 48? It's in long-term memory, and you can bring it back. And Jill, I remember one time a student, we asked him, what's 6 times 8? And he said, 42. This was a high school student who thought it was 42 for 10 years. That's one reason we check for understanding. We want to make sure we don't learn any errors. But if I asked you right now, what's 6 times 8? The reason you can say 48 is when you heard me say it, you went back into here and pulled up the answer 48, the product, and then came back and said it. Your students who do not know the math fact 6 times 8 cannot be cued, prompt, rewarded because it's not in long-term memory to be retrieved. So keep this in mind. When students don't know it, it's not there. You can't do anything. So we need to spend our time to get this to long-term memory. Mm-hmm. All right. So now, do you have this page on you in front of you?
Yes.
I think you do, don't you? Yeah. Okay. A partners. That finger should be on the brain. And I want you to teach the B partner what are the 3 components of the brain and their characteristics. Okay. Can you do that right now? A partner? Hands on the paper and explain to your partner these 3 things and the characteristics.
And
Okay, I think we're ready. Okay. Now, that technique, usually I do a pair share before a question. But sometimes I just do a pair share to help get the knowledge across. It's great if you have a map, a diagram, something to look at, something that you could show some organization or something, and have the partners just explain it to each other. And this is really a cognitive strategy. It's helping you remember and help you learn it just by talking about it and pointing to it. And sometimes if I have a map, you can take this note. The most interesting way is point your partner's paper and explain it on their paper. You'll just see the fact that you have to reach over and explain to them. It's very interactive with the children. So I had you explain on your own page, but I could explain on your other partner's page also. Also, if you have a whiteboard answer, like a math worked out problem, point to your math problem and explain to your partner how you worked it out.
That's right, John. One of the things that we've been seeing is something called learning by proximity. And there's something about your partner, your school age partner sharing something with you that is more meaningful than the teacher sharing with you. So that strategy you're sharing is actually very important to us.
Well, you're hearing it in different words and stuff, but remember, we've taught enough up front that they're not misinforming each other. They're applying what we just taught. Okay, there's a couple more things in here. Now, if you look up here, higher order thinking helps transfer. We're not just trying to memorize facts. Higher order thinking about stuff. How do you know? Justify your answer. Show me how you solved it. Point to the text. Show me textual evidence. And of course, multimedia, we talked about that right over here, visual and auditory. It's like 2 different ways of doing it. All right, so let's look down here. Higher order thinking. Okay, so people say, so how do I get higher order thinking? And I used to think of Bloom's and EOK, depth of knowledge and all that. It gets so complicated trying to calculate that. A higher order question is something you have to say yourself that you're not just reading back off the page. She wore a red dress. What color was the dress? It was red. That's a pretty low order. You're just reading it back. Okay. But when you do this other thing, like justify your answer. Well, how do you know it's a red page or red dress? Can you show me in the book where it is? Okay. Or how do you know that's the character or the setting? Interpret your answer. I see all of you wrote 12 on your whiteboards. What does that 12 mean? Oh, we just calculate the circumference. Oh, 12 is the centimeters around the circle. That's what that is. Interpret your answer, justify it. Okay, you said the character Cinderella. How do you know she's a character? Why is she? Oh, she's what? She's a person, she's what, talking or doing something. That's how we know she's a character. Even this other one, I see you have a different answer. Can you explain your thinking? Okay, even if you do have the correct answer or wrong answer, can you explain your thinking? And of course, I mentioned textual evidence. Okay, so try to get higher order. Lower order questions they stop around year 1 or year 2. You're not doing recall facts anymore. Answer who, what, where, why questions. You're not just pulling stuff out of the book. Let me give you a big hint. Remember when we first started, we did these big Naplin studies.
Yeah.
So these are a few years back. They may not be the latest ones, but I think they still apply. They do recall questions like in 3rd grade, okay, year 3, and they use stuff called pronoun reference was one thing they did. They said earthworms live underground. They have no arms and legs. And the question was, who has no arms and legs? You have to look at the word they and go back to the prior sentence, and it's earthworms. So this is one way they make a sort of more of a difficult question, even not a recall question. And the second one is synonyms. You might say, she wore a red dress, and it might say, what outfit did she have on? It doesn't say what color was the dress, to prevent you from doing that word search for an answer. So even those, we can get a little bit higher order. Okay, so now here's my check.
Oh, go ahead, John.
I
Sorry.
was going to ask my question. I think I've got it right here. How you apply brain research, but I think I'm going to go back here and say, how can you provide some higher order thinking in your classroom? Okay, so write a couple, and you can write a couple off of this here. Pick a couple you may not have thought of before. And you can say, I can provide higher order thinking right here. I can provide higher order thinking by, and then you can explain what's on your board. So write on your board right now, how can you provide higher order thinking?
Yes. Okay, great. As they're answering that, I want to give 3 different examples of that, John, what you just explained to us. Who is the character in the story? Then level 2 is, who is the character in the story and how do you know? And then level 3 is, who is a character in the story and can you make your own character in the story?
Yeah, create your own or come up with
Yeah.
your own.
Absolutely. So wonderful levels, right? Yes. Okay.
All right. Now we're going to have the partner B go first this time. I can provide higher order thinking by, and then do it, and then tell me why you selected it, and kind of connect why you would use it in your class or why you would think it would help your students. Okay, so the B's are going to go first. You should be sharing first, B's. All right, I think we're ready.
Yep.
Vanessa, are you up by the camera? Can you step up by the camera? Okay, I'm going to change it a little bit. I want you to be the presenter right now. Pretend you're the teacher for the class. You're going to turn and say, students, chin it, show me your boards, 1, 2, 3. Cue them to show their boards. You're going to look around. Then you're going to pick someone. Remember the sentence frame. I will create higher order thinking by. So if they forget the sentence frame, you're going to cue them for the sentence frame.
Okay, chin it. You can actually read.
Now, you don't read the whiteboards. This is one rule. The teacher does not read the whiteboards. The students read them to you. So pick a couple people to read their whiteboards.
Okay. Megan. So using the sentence frame, I can provide higher order thinking
by asking the student to teach someone else or them to teach me.
Why did you select that response?
I guess because if they can teach someone else, they can explain their thinking. So it helps them make sure that they actually have it sorted in their own thinking and in their memory first to be able to teach them else.
I want you to know that follow-up is what makes it an even a higher question. No matter what the question, how did you know? Explain your answer. Tell me your thinking. And you'll also find out if kids have misperceptions. If they explain something, you hear a mistake or something, you can pick it up. It's very important to do that. Explain your answer every time. Okay, very
John,
good.
No, John, you're 100% correct. Especially with like kindy or year 1, how many times they're like, I don't know, my brain told me. And of course, you're like, what did your brain tell you? You gotta grab those answers from them. Yes.
No, you're going to see students, sometimes they struggle explain. They can come up with the answer, but they can't tell you how. And part of EDI is training your students now to get that thinking out of how they do it. So the first time to do this, you're going to have to prompt them and cue them and help them do it. You model a couple yourself. When you solve a problem, you act like you're just learning it and you're doing all the thinking processes of how you do it. So yeah, that you'll have to start getting your students to develop that ability to do it. It comes pretty quickly, but sometimes initially it's a lot slower than we think.
Yeah.
All right, let's all read the first one. Ready to go. Explicit direct instruction provides multiple interactions with the content. And let's read the next part. 24 exposures to transfer information into long-term permanent memory. Why don't you put a little circle around that? 24 exposures. Now, let's think where we can get that. If you're doing math facts, 6 times 8 is 48. Say it 3 times. Say it to your partner 3 times. Write it on your whiteboard 2 times. Read it to your partner twice. For facts, it's more like chanting. Oh, the reason students don't know the math facts is because they didn't do that just brute force repetition. When you repeat 6 times 8 is 48, 6 times 8 is 48, your brain connects a neural pathway between 6 times 8 and 48. And as you keep saying that message over and over again, it chemically changes the myelin. I think it puts myelin out over the neural pathways or something. And it makes a very strong pathway. When that pathway gets kind of chemically put together, it's in long-term memory and you can retrieve it. Okay, so chanting is important. Now remember, repetition, it goes to permanent memory, right or wrong. So make sure we're not chanting something that's incorrect. Now chanting is really for sight words. It's for math facts, for simple stuff. The higher order thinking is work the problem, explain your answer and stuff. And then, of course, fluidity, like long division or multiplication, is what you need to do at a lot of times where you don't have to think about it anymore. Okay, so how do we get these exposures? The first one is pair shares. And pair shares count twice because what you're saying it to your partner and then you're hearing it. So pair shares is like being reteached or saying it 2 more times. Choral reading, when I ask you to read something with me, that counts. And you're going to see when choral reading in a few minutes, the teacher does pre-read, especially foundation year 1, the beginning readers. The teacher always pre-reads it. So most of the important things in a lesson are actually read twice. You pre-read, they follow along with their eyes, that counts, and then they read it to you. Now, answering questions, you notice we've called 2 people each time. Now, the whole classroom is hearing those answers. They're hearing the teacher elaborate or paraphrase the answer. Generally, we call about 3 people. Sometimes if it's a sophisticated question, it requires a lot of thinking to justify the answer. I'll call 3 or 4 or 5 people, and their justifications will get better and better and better as more people keep presenting and people hearing it more. So sometimes I call more. I don't want to hear a recall fact. I don't need to call 5 people that the dress was red, but a thinking question, how do you know the character was optimistic? Explain with the passage or something like that takes a lot of thinking. Calling more and more people to express themselves actually helps us learn. Okay, whiteboards, of course, whiteboards, they all come up. So now we've talked about it, we've heard it, and we actually wrote some of it down. Okay. And then, of course, we solve problems later on as we do problems during guided practice and independent practice and periodic review. We get other repetitions there. But we do get a lot of these repetitions during the classroom by the delivery strategies we use. Okay. All right. So let's see what else we've got in here. So what are we going to do here? We need repetitions. I think the research from Marzano is actually 16 to 24 repetitions. Okay. So I just put on your whiteboards right now. Okay. How can you provide some, let's call them, we used exposures here. How can you provide more exposures to the content in your classroom? And let's look down some of these right here. Let's have the A partner go first. Okay. How can you provide more exposures in the classroom? I can provide more exposures to the content by, okay. All right, Vanessa?
Yep.
Can you call a new teacher to come up to be the teacher to call for the whiteboards and to call the non-volunteers and to cue for the sentence frame?
Jenna? Yeah. I'm not reading the memo.
No.
Let's do Kate.
Okay. I can provide exposures by returning to the content maybe during eating time even, or the following morning. So it's like all that repetition. And within the lesson, I guess getting the kids to explain to each other. So it's like double and making sure that they've got the correct content, obviously, but it's like they heard from me and a friend and then go off and talk about it again. So I don't know, that's all I wrote.
But then you need to ask why.
Oh, yeah.
And what? Why do you say that?
I guess from my time in the classroom, I feel like that's worked. My kids are quite needy, so it's like go talk to each other about it instead of me reiterating over and over again, which is good, but they can also do it for each other as well.
Okay, great. We're just going to call one for right now, but in a real classroom, you need to call a couple more people and then really even more and more. And if the answers are shaky, you have to make some instructional decisions about correcting the students.
Now,
All right.
John, I have to stop you right here. Now, John, you and I, this is a true story. John and I drove up to Los Angeles to Hollywood, California. And we went to this big, beautiful high school where everybody's car, even the student parking lot, was absolutely gorgeous looking. And John's doing a presentation, and a high school teacher who had this big, beautiful, like globe. Remember that, John? Had a globe on her chest, like a necklace that had a diamond for every place she visited in the world. And she says to you, John, she was like, John, when I talk, my kids just listen to me. They automatically just listen to me, John. I really don't need all this stuff. And John, you're very polite. You're like, oh, okay, well, I understand that. And you said something like the kids are basically teacher proof because the kids are high socioeconomic. But John, what do you say to teachers who are like kind of challenging you a little bit about kids listening to them and stuff? What's your thoughts on that, John?
Well, I remember we talked about this before. I think your teachers are working with low social economics. Is that correct? Or some of them?
Yeah, 50-50. Yeah, 40-60.
See, a lot of that is background knowledge. In a high SES family, I forgot the research. The students have heard so many thousands of words before they even come to school, vocabulary words. And the EL learners have heard no English words before they come to school, or very limited amount because the parents have a limited amount. So you do have a variety of students at different levels. And I don't want to get in a big battle with teachers, but at some schools, we used to say the students are teacher-proof. They know so much background, but they're actually providing background knowledge as opposed to what you're actually teaching them on the spot. They know a lot. We can't count on background knowledge, okay? And we can't control the family. So we want to work on what we can control. So keep this in mind, what we can control. We can control that we pair share every time. We can control that we stay on grade level, that we have a written definition, right? That we use sentence frames. So let's focus on what we can control on and get this idea of it's the parents, it's the school, it's everything. We can't bother blaming anything. We just need to be as effective as we can all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Primacy recency effect. Okay, this is some research on the brain research. If you have a 40-minute lesson, the students tend to, prime time one is the beginning of the lesson. They tend to remember the first things you said at the beginning of the class. It kind of clicks early on, something you said early on. And they tend to remember what you heard at the end. And there's some kind of downtime in the middle. So there's a couple of applications of this. First of all, you have to kind of keep your practices up. The pair share, the whiteboards, the questioning, the tracked reading to keep everybody engaged because the brain starts to tune out after a while. And Joel, I used to say every time you pair share or choral read, you reset the attention clock.
Right.
This talks about 40 minutes. If you talk to the foundation or year one teachers, they'll say the attention span of a student is less than 2 minutes. And that is the real attention span. And that's why we should be doing something every couple of minutes. I think I said in the EDI book, a checking for understanding question every few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, and then of course, pair share, read with me, track, explain to your partner. Those can be even 1 or 2 times per minute. That's what keeps the brain going and not getting this big lag down here. Okay, now, if you teach a longer session, don't go to 60 minutes. If you go to 60 minutes, this downtime gets longer and longer and longer. Okay, so our rule for foundation is 20 minutes. I don't know what you feel as teachers, but we teach very short lessons, 20 minutes. And then we do a physical break. It's a stand up, it's a jump up and down, it's sing song, dance. It has to be a physical movement. And then the students can sit down and we can do another 15 or 20 minutes. Now the year 5, I remember specifically, Joel, I was in Australia and my year 5 kids were tuning out. And I made them all stand up. I mean, I think we did a pair share standing up. We did some gestures. We did a couple things, then we all sat down and restarted. Even with adults, sometimes we might take a wiggle break just in the middle to reset our brains.
That's right.
Okay, so we need to continually reset ourselves. And of course, the worst case is talking too long. So make sure we're not talking too long. This is called the lesson session, but you could never talk for 40 minutes. I think my record for a low elementary school was 28 minutes. I saw a teacher talk for 28 minutes while the kids sat with their hands flat on the desk. And I know we're just going in that first memory part. We're not really going anywhere. All right, let's go on, Joel. I know you wanted to pick up the pace, so we're going to look at the next one. All right. Now, a minute ago, a teacher got up and talked about practicing again tomorrow and repeating something. So this is the research on that. We talked about 16 to 24 repetitions, pair share, whiteboards. That's called mass, MASS practice, compressed practice during the teaching. We also need what's called distributed practice or periodic review.
Yep.
And this is the research. Okay, University of Waterloo. All right. After you know so much, by the next day, you've forgotten a lot of it. By a week later, you've forgotten a lot of it. And by 30 days, you've almost completely forgotten it. So I've had students that do a benchmark test, a unit test, a month or two later, and they say, oh, you never taught that. And the teacher says, I taught that. Their brain has actually forgotten it. They haven't gotten it back there or reworked it. So this is the actual research. If your brain's starting to fade like already overnight, if the next day you just repeat it for a few minutes, do a couple practice problems, maybe 1 or 2 warm-ups or something, you're bringing that back up. If a week later you do a little bit more, it's bringing it back up. And then by a month later or 2 or 3 weeks later, you do it again and you're bringing it back up. In theory, these sessions can be shorter and shorter each time, but you're going over it and over it again. Now, let me give you a couple of big hints here. If you just 1 week later say, students, solve these 3 circumference problems. Because Joel, I did this research with a principal. He went around, he says, the students are not doing it. He said, what's wrong? Only half the students are doing it. And I said, they've forgotten how to do it. So this is the rule for review. You have to do one first. Can everybody write that down? When you do review problems, kids, let me show you how to add these fractions. Da, 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 da. Now, here's another one. Work it on your whiteboards. Work this one on your whiteboards and explain to your partner. So you need to facilitate, have a worked problem on the board, or you work one, or quickly reteach. If you don't do that reteach, it's a quiz. The students who know it are getting faster, and the students who don't are just staying there. You're actually making the gap between the high and performing students bigger, because the ones who know it are getting more practice and repetition, and the ones who don't are kind of stuck there.
John, I was going to say, this is an important thing. Administrators who are listening to this webinar right now should start thinking about some sort of like formative, maybe Friday review day or something, because this is a big deal, John, because I taught the lesson, my kids don't remember. It is actually my fault because I didn't reteach the lesson. It is
right.
It's almost I have to reteach the lesson, otherwise I've wasted 45 minutes or 35 minutes or whatever it is for that initial lesson.
And by the time a NAPLAN test comes up, it might have been months since you taught it. Now, when we wrote our curriculum in Australia, we actually built this in. Every lesson, we had little review periods every day. We had 2.5 hours a day. It's very complicated. You're doing this lesson plus the one for a week and then one for 2 or 3 weeks back. So I actually recommend to schools now, if they could just select a time frame every other Friday, every second Monday, the last day of the month, 2 hours at some time during the week, just pick a time that they're going to do review on these times. And the teacher can just, in an ad hoc method, together whatever's been done recently, plus some further past and further in the past, and have the work problems ready. If you don't have some type of periodic review, the brain is fighting you because this stuff is going to be forgotten. I know the kindy teachers sing the A, B, C, D, E, F, G every day for the whole year.
That's
And
right.
that's part of brain research. We're doing it to get it in there. So this has to be everything: long division, circumference, character traits, similes, metaphors, figurative language. It needs to be everything. So I want you to talk with your partners and say, how can you personally come up with a periodic review? I can come up with a periodic review by. Now, the principle, I want you to think, if you were going to put out a rule, not a rule, a suggestion for the school, what could you suggest that you could be organized at the school level? So teachers, I can provide periodic review. Go ahead.
We already do periodic reviews. We call them daily retrieval practice for maths. Classes for English slowly. Not looking at we haven't looked at it yet for things like character traits and things like that. It's the real skills. But we've only just started dabbling, so we're really keen to hear more about what you're saying there. But it resonates with what we're looking at. We've done a little bit of talk about the forgetting curve.
Okay, so I think you're already doing it. And then you should have like a school-wide policy, and then the teachers being aware of it on their own if they're in sync with it, or maybe they're adding a little bit or have their own version. But you do need to have some kind of periodic review in there, or the students are not going to retain it later on. All right, so I'll skip that question since we're already doing it. All right, everyone would like their students to be engaged. And we put this together originally for a summer school we did. And we said, wow, we put together as to train students for classroom behavior, but we said, wow, this is really creating engagement. So we actually renamed it Creating Academic Student Engagement. So let's read the secret of student engagement. Let's read it together. Ready to go. Student engagement is created when the teacher asks the students to do something. This is how you make students be engaged. I have you read with me. I have you pair share. I have you hold up your whiteboards. The reason you're engaged is I keep asking you to do stuff. And these are the main things we're going to ask our students to do. Now, I did that explicit direct instruction at the beginning to kind of teach you how to say the new words we're going to use. So the pronounce with me is our first strategy. Okay, we want students to be able to pronounce the big words in the lesson. Now, here's the secret when you do it. Pure listening and speaking is just you saying a word and the students repeating it. But we want to support reading at the same time. So we're going to have the student look at the word at the same time. So you point to the word with the cursor like this, with an arrow pointer or stick, or you touch the word on the page and you have the students touch the word on the page. Now that only works for students who can already read. Joel, in Australia, I had the foundations touch the words with me and they had the page upside down. Yeah. They were pointing, but they had no idea where to point. So sometimes for young students, we can use what's called air tracking. Okay, so let's practice air tracking for a minute. Let's say we're young students right now. Students, you can see this word engagement. Everybody point to that word. Let me see all your fingers up. Are we pointing to the word? Follow with your finger. I'm going to say it. Engagement. Your turn. Engagement. One more time. Engagement. Okay, turn to your partner and say engagement twice. All right, now let's say we're with older students and you've got a handout in front of them. Students, we're going to read this word right here. Can you put your finger on this word on your handout? Let me see the fingers on the word. You got your handouts? Right here? Okay, check your partner that their fingers on the word. If not, show them where to look. I can't tell you how effective that is. Even some of you were going like this. Okay, this word is pronounce. Let's all say it. Pronounce. Turn to your partner and read that word twice. Go ahead. Okay. So for the younger students, we can air track, but the idea is you're always looking at a word someplace. Okay, so basically you point to the word, pronounce it, and then have the students pronounce it after you. Now make strategic decisions. Engagement, kids might misread that as gagment, okay? So I pick, usually they're sophisticated words or the big words that are in the lesson, okay? All right, now this is just one more trick you can use. It's called backward syllabication. This is a very long word that's difficult to pronounce or read. And so I'm going to start from the back end of it here. So I'm going to say it, you're going to say after me. Nucleic. Your turn. Nucleic. Now, ribonucleic. Your turn. Ribonucleic. Okay, now I'm going to add one more. Oxyribonucleic. Your turn. Oxyribonucleic. Okay, the next one. Deoxyribonucleic. Your turn. deoxyribonucleic. Now let's read it all together. Ready? Deoxyribonucleic. Can you read that word to your partner twice? Go ahead. I was so surprised the first time I did that because I could not read that word. Now I can sight read it, deoxyribonucleic. I mean, I can't really sound it out, but I know it and I know how to say it. So this is just a strategy you can use as when you see big words. Okay.
John, as you know, I'm mostly focused on English language development, ELD, or English learners. And for me, when I see pronounce with me, it's high leverage academic words with multiple syllables, and high, and of course, words with multiple meaning. Like, for example, determine. I'd be like, my students, I'll be like, okay, determine means like you really want to like do something, but determine can also mean figure out, it's multiple meanings and stuff, because we have a lot of English learners working with us. So I do pronounce with me as well. Now, John, my question to you, when I see pronounce with me, what are your thoughts or your ideas for students who are like mixed backgrounds? Sometimes we have EL, sometimes we have high socioeconomic. What do you like to do when you support them?
Well, here's a funny statement. For new content, all students are English learners. The first time you taught deoxyribonucleic, nobody could read that word. Determine, correspond, separate. A lot of these words are new words for everybody. So you have to do more listening and speaking than you think. And you tell when the kids are starting to do choral reading, you ask them to read, they can't read back. And you say, well, I thought they could read all this. So you usually preempt by doing it. Okay, so now let me just pull one up here. I've got a lesson up here. Let's see if I can get it up here.
Awesome.
Okay, so we're going to do this lesson. Let me get back to the beginning of it.
Sure.
So here's just the very first page right here. Okay, this is a great big word right here. Now, then you just put this up for the students. They've probably never seen this word before. So I want you to do this. I want the A partners to teach the B partners just to pronounce this word. So you should be pointing up there. The word is blank. Say it to your partner twice and do it like that. So do just like I did. A's, teach B's how to say this word and cue them where to look.
Friends.
All right, now let's have the B partners do it. Got this page in front of you. So B partners, pick a word just off this page. You can pick words I've already done. Cue your partner to look, maybe to put their finger on it or look at it. And the B partners teach the A's how to say the word. So the idea here is you need to pick a few words, usually ahead of time when you're planning the lessons. I write L and S next to them, and Joel was talking about vocabularies. There's vocabularies integrated. Sometimes we're teaching vocabulary at the same time, but at least we're teaching the kids how to say their words. So when they come up the perimeter, we've pre-pronounced it enough times they can actually say it. Character traits, and a lot of this figurative language, these different words, they can actually say the words. Okay, so this would be our first one. Pronounce with me. Let's read our next strategies together. Ready, go. Track with me, read with me. Okay, so usually from foundation to year 1 and year 2, I pre-read almost everything they're beginning to read. They can't read well enough. So the full tracked reading is you read first and the students read afterwards. Okay, so I'm going to do right here, students. Let's air track. Put your fingers up here. I'm going to read first. Let me see all the fingers here, and then you'll read after me. Student engagement. Track with me, read with me. Class, your turn. Student engagement. Track with me, read with me. Okay, that's the full one. Now, as the students become better and you look at the sentences, maybe there's only 1 or 2 hard words, and you can use our second strategy, which is just pre-read 1 or 2 words, the difficult words. So these are kind of sight words. The students probably know these words. Students, this word is engagement. Now let's read the whole thing together. Go. Student engagement. Track with me, read with me. So the second strategy is what? Just pick a few difficult words and say it, and then just do it. And students' oral what vocabulary is a lot better than their reading vocabulary. So once you say the word, they might recognize the word, although they can't read it on their own. Okay, now the second one is choral only. As the students get older and you've got these very simple sentences and text, kids, this is important. Let's read together. Let's look over here. Ready, go. Track with me, read with me. I'm not pre-reading that. We can just read it. So I'm reading more for engagement, to keep the kids more alert, to follow along, keep them engaged with what we're trying to do. So there's the third one, is just the choral only. Now, the next one, chunked reading. Chunked reading is used really for scaffolding or for non-readers or beginning readers. You're still going to read. We've done foundation day one. We started reading when no one had any idea how to read, but we acted like we were reading. So the chunked reading is you read in small parts and then the students read after you. So students, let's look up here. I'll read first. Student engagement, your turn. Student engagement is created, your turn, is created when the teacher, go ahead, when the teacher, and I'll read the whole thing, ask the students to do something. Your turn, ask the students to do something. Now, that also works as a scaffolding strategy. When you call a student, can you read the definition to me? And if they can't read, you jump right in and you start reading and they just repeat it right after you. And you can do this with English learners too. If you've got ELs, we've been in many schools where the ELs are getting so much translation support that they're not learning any English. So even the ELs, even if they just say one word at a time after you, they should be actually saying all the words. Okay. So let's look at a lesson. The one we just had a minute ago. I'm just going to do some choral reading right here. We'll pretend I've pre-pronounced. Students, we have the learning objective up here. Let me read it. We will draw inferences from text. Class, let's read. We will draw inferences from text. All right, let's have the A partners read to the B partners. What are we going to do today? A's read. Okay, let's have the B partners read. Now I'm going to pick someone to read.
We will draw inferences from text.
Yeah, now, if you get stuck and he mispronounces inferences, some people try to go inferences or they've got it wrong. I usually have the whole class say it together and then try to cue and prompt to try to widen it. Now, if you're completely stuck, I'd say, can you read? I'll read it and you read with me. We will draw. Your turn. We
will draw
inferences. Can you say that?
inferences
From text.
from text.
Okay, now let's try to read it all together. Go. We will draw inferences from text. Okay, so you can do quite a bit of it. All right. Let's get back to where we were. Okay, you're tracking read with me. All right, the next one is gestures. Let's read it. Gesture with me. Oh, one more hint. Read it, get ready, go. Usually you can use hand signals. I'll read, and then I could just give you a cue. And the students know to do the echo reading, so I don't spend all the time, get ready, count to 3, beginning, I'll read, you read. Once the students know it, you can do it a lot more fluid and not have all that time lost with directions. Okay, let's look at the one right here. We've got one here. Character traits are revealed by what he thinks, says, or does. So everybody look at me. Character traits are revealed by what he thinks. Show me your hand. I'm thinking. Character traits are revealed by what he says. Show me talking. And character traits are revealed by what he does. Now let's say it all together. Ready? And with the gesture. Character traits are revealed by what he thinks, what he says, and what he does. Okay, let's have the B partners. Tell A partners how character traits are revealed. B, tell A, and I want to see your hands up at the same time. Okay. I can't tell you how important these are. The kindy and foundation and year one students cannot look back on the page for a definition because they can't read well enough. Okay, so the gestures are carrying the lesson. They're remembering the gesture. So when you say something, they can give you the gesture back. And Joel, you remember I was in Australia and it was a year 5 standard. How does a narrative start? And the sentence was, every narrative must start with the people, the place, and the problem. And so I had this gesture. and then we read a little story. Joe and his father were canoeing and they fell in the water and a crocodile came up and all that. All right, so that was what the people was Joe and the father. The place, the setting was the river, and the problem was the crocodile came up. Okay, so I had this little gesture. I said, okay, every narrative must start with the people. I'm pointing myself, the place where it happens, and the problem. Okay, so let's all say it together. Every narrative starts with the people, the place, and the problem. Okay, B's, tell A's. How does a narrative start? Show me your hands. B's, tell A's.
A narrative starts with whole narrative starts with a play.
Now it's important that the students do the gesture. It's not you doing it as a teacher. That the kinesthetic part of it is the students are doing it. Okay, they're doing it. Now, let me tell you, in Australia, I taught that lesson and I used that gesture. And the teacher came up to me and she says, I can't, she says, you won't believe this, John. This boy so-and-so, he learned how to start a narrative with the people, the place, and the problem. And then she looked at me and said, he's a non-reader. He couldn't read a word of the entire lesson. He still got the lesson. He used the gesture. And you remember our idea? 100% of people learn concepts, even if they have sub-skill errors. A non-reader got it. We got the big idea across. He was a non-reader. His knowledge got moved up on that day. Okay, so the gestures can really work for younger students. Okay.
John, no, 100% correct. Ladies and gentlemen who are watching this webinar right now, John is spitting out diamonds. No, you are, because the gesture, you're using that as a way of, I'm teaching the concept, and even though my students may not understand the sub skills, you're bypassing the sub skills by using a humble gesture. And then when it's time for checking for understanding, your gesture can be used as a prompt.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
So if I ask the student, so how do you know he's the character trait? How do you know he's optimistic or something? I said, well, all I got to do is what? I can, oh yeah, he was thinking that, oh, what happened? Oh, he said this. Oh, he did this. So the gesture is a great cue when you don't have the words, you're not just looking, not just really telling the person, you're actually giving the gesture instead. Okay, I've got one more for you.
Yep.
Now, if you've ever done greater than or less than, be careful you're making the gesture and the students are seeing it in a mirror image, so you have to kind of do it backwards. So I'm going to turn around. I don't know if you can even see my hands. You're going to have to think of it backward. I can't do it because the camera's cutting it off, but just pretend I'm doing it correctly. Okay. A prefix is a letter or letters at the beginning of a word to change its meaning. Okay, let's see if we can all do that. A prefix is a letter or letters at the beginning of a word to change its meaning. Okay, let's have the A partners. Tell your partners what's a prefix and show the gesture. All right, now, B partners, you're going to make up your own gesture. B partners, teach your partner what a suffix is. A suffix is okay. Then, of course, we got an example. Read means is a prefix. Reread, rethink, rewrite, resubmit, retest. It changes the meaning of the word that we're going to have to do it again. So the teaching is not just a gesture. You need the example and the definitions. Okay, so gestures are very important for that. Okay, let's look at the next one. We've got two strategies now. Let's read them together. Pair share, A to B, B to A, attention signal, eyes front, back straight. So you've seen us use pair shares several times today. And I think we've already talked about labeling the partners, because you want to say A's tell B's, B's tell A. If you just say talk to your partner, usually one person talks over or does all the talking all the time. So kind of cue who goes first. Sometimes they say A tell B, they say switch, or A's go first. When you're finished, then B's come in, and sometimes have B's go first. So here, identify who talks first. Now, strategic pairs. You can't have the two lowest students together or the two highest students together. The research is actually 1 with 10, 2 with 11, 3 with 12, but that's too complicated. So just kind of mix up your students. Now, if you have trouble, disciplines, problems in hot spots, I think it's usually because you've got a couple of pairs that need to be split and give them some new partners. Okay, so that brings up this next part about rotating the pairs. I don't have the research, but every few weeks, once a month, once a quarter or something, just have everybody, all the A's get up, move up a desk or two and sit down, and then we've got new partners. If you have whole class discipline problems, and I've seen that with a principal one time, it's a very easy way to kind of change the dynamic of the whole class is the pair share partner swap. Okay. All right, so we label the partner, identify who goes first, strategic pairs. Now, arranging the desks. Let's see if I've got the, oh, first of all, let's talk about even why we're pair sharing. Yeah, this is the next page. So why are we going to pair share? Pair share used to be my most cued practice for teachers when we would go in and co-teach and work with teachers. They would forget to pair share. So I've got several reasons why we're going to pair share. Now, the administrator, and I think at DataWORKS, we've been in thousands of classrooms. In a typical classroom, non-EDI classroom, the same 3 or 4 students that are raising their hands in the front couple of rows are answering all the questions. And we're not getting other people involved. I'm not sure you have this page. It's 26 or 27.
They do, John. They do.
Oh, they got it? Okay, great. Okay. So what happens when you call those hand wavers, the volunteers, the same students are talking the whole year and the other students are not even getting a chance to answer questions. They're never being involved. Okay. So now just look at number 1 here. Every student orally answers every question. So once you've started the pair shares, even if they don't get called on, they're still answering every single question and thinking about it, okay? You've probably heard the research on wait time. If you call the questions too quickly, the kids don't get to process the question, and the ones who didn't answer maybe don't even think. The basic research is 3 to 5 seconds to get kids to process. Well, the pair share takes care of the wait time. What? Because every student has time during the pair share to rehearse and practice. Right. So automatic wait time is done. Let's see if I've just got a couple more.
Yep.
Here's an interesting one. Provides the first reteach, and the students do it for you.
Right.
So, yeah. And let's see what I've got here. Okay, I think I've got plenty of other questions. Oh, number 6 for administrators, increases student talk to teacher talk ratio. If you've ever had the state come and they see you doing a lot of pair shares, they said, wow, this is great instruction. Look at what the students are doing. They're not always looking at what you're doing as a teacher. They want to see the students doing something. And the pair shares are really good when they're always academic related pair shares too. Okay, so get your whiteboards out and you're just going to write a number. Okay, 1 through 15 or 2 numbers. Okay. And then this is the sentence frame. Get ready. I'm going to pair share for the rest of my career because. You're probably in tune with pair shares, but a lot of schools, it was such a change that they just were not used to pair shares at all. Okay, let's have the A's go first. I will pair share for the rest of my career because. And then be ready to tell me why you picked that. And the principal is going to get up and call you, and you're going to tell the principal why you're going to pair share.
All right, Miss Vanessa, get ready to share in about 45 seconds. That's good. Everybody's sharing. Now, John, I will have to share with you really quick, like my favorite teacher who I happen to be married to, who happens to be the best teacher in her school district. She shared with me the other day, like she does pair share, and she does pair share to your pocket, and she makes her students put notes in their pocket or pair share to the other classroom. So that means they yell it out. And I always thought that's pretty cool. She has grabbed it and made it her own for sure.
Yeah, I've seen that. Tell the ceiling your answer. Tell the floor. It's another way of kind of getting repetitions in there.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, principal, get up there, call the chin out. Did everybody pair share?
No, we haven't yet.
Okay, cue them to pair share. Tell them who's going to go first,
Mm.
and remind them of the sentence frame.
And John, we're almost out of time. I'm so sorry.
No, we're not. We've got another half hour, I think.
No, we're done at 10.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, we can go over a couple minutes, I think, to make up
Yeah,
for what
no,
we
we're
did.
always okay for that, but still. You and I are having a good time, but we gotta make sure to go home and do other things.
Okay, call out why we're going to pair share.
Mhm.
Okay, Adrian. Why are you going to pair share for the rest of your life?
Mhm. Say it loud, please.
I'm going to pair share for the rest of my career because students practice their answers.
And why did you select that?
To promote each student to contribute to the class. I think it will help for students who, the fear of getting something wrong or something like that. This will really help with that.
Yeah, that's actually 15 also reduces affective filter. It gets over the nervousness, or you've actually practiced your answer. That's a very good one. Okay, so I think we're down to the last minute here. Maybe everybody could just write down one thing on a whiteboard, how they think they can change after just today. Okay, I'm going to go back to this page right here. We talked about this mostly today, and we talked about the brain research. So tell me one or two things you can do today. Okay, white sentences. We've done this a little bit. There's more research on it. So write down a couple of things today. Strategies I can apply will be blank, or I can apply in my classroom. And remember, we had the brain research, and we had this, and we had the reasons to pair share and all of these. Okay, quickly, let's have the A's tell B's and B's tell A's. Judge Joel, I think I misjudged the time.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm thinking, oh, we got more time. Well, we got three
No.
more sessions.
Well, we did an hour and a half today, John.
Yeah. Okay. Vanessa, can you call some people to report out? Some strategies I will use are blank.
Okay, please say it nice and loud into the microphone, please.
Can you say that again? We didn't hear you.
Okay, call some people.
Call some people.
Yep. Chin it, and then let's see some answers. Here's some answers.
And I'm going to invite Julie to come up. I haven't picked on this thing. You haven't got a whiteboard, Sarah. I can get it.
Okay, so strategies I can apply are asking students to explain their thinking. I think that's really important because getting students to obviously say why they think, but also being able to understand that this is why they need to apply that and being able to back that up with other evidence. Even from a specialist point of view, using examples where they may have seen that. So if they play sport outside of school, I've used this here because, and then what the implications that are.
Okay, very good. I think that's probably going to be the last one. Maybe we can just read my little motto on the bottom page. Can you all see where it says all students? This will be our last sentence. Okay, ready, go. All students successfully taught grade level work every day. And this is how you do it with the strategies we're working on today. So, Joel, I think that's our final word for today. And we'll have the other sessions coming up.